Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our training session on wood specie with a focus on South American exotics. I'm Joe Flaherty with Custom Wholesale. Along with me in one of the Hollywood squares is Craig Brown. He's with Custom Wholesale as well. He's going to moderate our Q&A session, and our presenter and trainer is Dan Gold of Indus Parquet. As a reminder, you can send a question or multiple questions in at any time through the questions portal. We'll answer that during our Q&A session. And again, this and all of our seminars are being recorded, and we're going to post this to our CWF videos channel on YouTube. Now this topic is near and dear to my heart. Not only do I have an exotic floor in my home, I'm a big fan of exotics. I think as far as grain pattern and things to appreciate and look at in wood flooring, exotic specie has a lot over most domestic specie, with the exception of possibly American walnut. When I came into this industry 23 years ago, most companies only had a couple items to sell. We had a red oak natural with 15 different shades of gunstock, probably a couple maples and a couple hickories. Exotics were the first major trend I was involved in, and CWF really championed that trend, focusing on better products, thicker wear layers, and extra wide planks that were 5 inches wide. It was really crazy stuff back then. Since that time, we've had a couple other major trends. For several years, we had the hand scrape trend, and currently we're in, I guess, what we would call the European oak trend. This one I find pretty funny, because for 15 plus years, we couldn't sell an oak to save our lives. Even when hand scrape was popular, nobody wanted to know of a hand scraped oak. Yet, I guess if you looked at your showrooms, I would say 50% of the SKU, 50% of the SKUs, the specie is probably an oak of some sort. And even in the alternate products like waterproof vinyl or laminate, most of the SKUs replicate a wood decor. So it tells you a little bit about trends. I think now is the right time to re-champion exotics. We're getting wider planks, 7 inches or wider with exotics now. The advent of low gloss, brushed textures, modernized colors on these exotics really allow it to rival European oak in sales in a lot of ways. So we hope you start focusing on it. And really knowing the differences and the nuances between the wood specie on your showroom not only makes everybody a better sales professional, but relaying this information to the consumer really puts you at a competitive edge, especially on the front end of a trend. And the front end of a trend is where we all want to be. It's realistically on the front end, that's really where the profit is. If we're waiting for consumers to come in and ask for things, by that time, that product is pretty much already saturated. And although the sales might be great, the profit isn't so great. So we hope you take a lot of things from today and you're able to apply them when consumers are finally able to come into your showrooms. We hope you're able to use them on the sales floor on a daily basis, and they benefit you. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dan Gold of Indus Parquet.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. So just a second about myself. I live in New Jersey. I've been with Indus Parquet for close to 5.5 years, since February of 2015. I cover the East Coast, all sales in the East Coast. So for those of you familiar with distribution footprints, I cover custom wholesale floors, Dur flooring, and the Belknap White Group, which is pretty much, takes into consideration the entire East Coast. So with that being said, I'm happy to have the opportunity to present to you guys today. I certainly appreciate everyone's time. This presentation today, it's a little bit different. When I was planning it with Joe, it was very important to him that this wasn't a situation where it was just like, hey, I got this great new display and everyone would be crazy if they don't have it, and here's the great pallet price on Brazilian cherry. It was important in this presentation that we talk about things a little deeper than that, environmental, kind of the wood and the performance of the Brazilian, South American exotic hardwoods, some of the manufacturing processes that Indus Parquet has that we feel set us aside from some of our other competition. So with that being said, let's get started here. All right, so for the sake of this presentation, some of the things that we're going to talk about today, the description would be Brazilian hardwood is unique to the world. All right. So whereas in in other parts there's a couple different species and we have, let's say, 8 or 9 stained colors. That's kind of not the way we do it here. So the forests of Brazil are home to a broad and exclusive array of species that deliver the hardest and most breathtaking wood products. This presentation will discuss the benefits of using hardwood flooring, including the durability, the aesthetics, the remarkable selection, and the rigorous sustainability process followed by manufacturers of the region of this world. Okay, at the end, I'm hopefully that we can retain some of this information. We can describe the size of Brazil's rainforest and list several reasons for its biodiversity. We can name the governing body in Brazil for forestry regulations and at least 3 of the international certifications that Brazil hardwood products have. Hopefully we can identify at least 8 of the 12 species unique to Brazil that we use in our flooring. And we can describe the hardness ratings of Brazil hardwood compared to North American species and define unique aesthetics characteristics of Brazil hardwood. Okay, so I thought that picture on the top right was really unique. That's like a close-up of a outer space picture, if that makes sense. So you can see kind of like the green factor of Brazil. Instead of reading word for word those 2 paragraphs, I just wanted to bring some of the stats on there that I thought were noteworthy and important. So Brazil contains 5.2 million square kilometers of forest land. 60% of its territory is forest. Almost 99% of it is natural forest. A little over 1% is man-made planted. Just for reference of that, the entire US area of land is 9.6 million square kilometers. There are an estimated 390 billion trees, not just in Brazil, but in the whole, let's call it Amazon region. But if you can, if anyone's familiar with a map of South America, you know how much larger Brazil is as far as land than any other country. There are 16,000 species of trees, 40,000 species of different plants, and it's estimated that perhaps 30% of all plant tree life exists here in Brazil. Now, it's very widely debated as to why that is. There are several different kind of explanations for it, and this slide could, as far as science goes, this could lead to several different presentations on its own. But for the sake of it being a flooring presentation, I'm just going to give you the bullet points of some of the most kind of commonly thought of reasons as for why it's so diverse. And when I say diverse, I'm meaning that I just listed all the different species there was of plant and trees. So that would be compared, when I say diverse, that would be compared to, let's say, somewhere here in the US or in somewhere else in North America, Canada, where there's one forest and 80–90% of the forest is made up of, let's say, pine trees. It's just not like that in Brazil. There's so much diversity. So it could be due to the age of the tropical forest biome, the geographical isolation from climate changes, less stress and predictable physical environment, the variety of habitats, high levels of solar energy, and the large topographical complex area. Okay, so our mission here at IP, and if anyone knows kind of like the family at Indus Parquet, you would know that it's unbelievably important that we take environmental aspects into our processes here at Indus Parquet. So we try our best to develop, manufacture, and sell high quality hardwood flooring while maintaining environmentally responsible manufacturing practices, always adding value and beauty to the environment, and consequently providing satisfaction and pleasure to the customer. So it's very easy for me to say that, it's very easy to sit in this chair and say, yeah, believe me, we do everything right. We, go through all the right lumber stages to get all of our stuff documented and be 100% responsible. but where maybe other manufacturers in a country, let's say like the US, where there aren't stereotypes, there aren't kind of like rumors out there that foresting is not considered important to the country, and they allow things that wouldn't be allowed in other countries to go on. There's environmental agencies that that take into consideration of these things, and we are proud and we welcome all the different governing bodies that we have the ability to be transparent with and to show that we take all the necessary steps to be environmentally responsible. There we go. Okay, so probably our most strict one that comes into our plant every year and audits us is the FSC. So really this slide is going to explain two different bodies. One is the FSC and the other one is IBAMA, which I'm going to read in a second. So just so people understand what that is, like similar to the way the US has a USDA and then a subdivision that's like the US Forest Service, that's pretty much what IBAMA is. So Brazilian hardwood manufacturers maintain the FSC, which is, I think, everywhere known as the best international certification group for forest products. Also, the Brazilian government strictly controls the country's timber harvest. Specifically, IBAMA demands that lumber must be sourced from reforestation or managed forests. Under IBAMA regulations, only 8 trees per 3/4 acre can be removed from the forest, as well as endangered trees cannot be, trees that provide food for animals, and trees that are seed carriers are not harvested. When few trees in a given area are removed and the fertile ones remain, the forest naturally regenerates itself. Manufacturers in Brazil have developed processes to achieve a simple and important goal: to consume 100% of all timber that arrives at production facility. Byproducts are used as energy sources or for innovatively designed recycled products. Okay, so just to elaborate on that last paragraph there, we do that. We have a 100%, we use all of our wood products, 0% waste policy. So even the sawdust that gets created by our cutting machines and our saws, they get recycled into an energy system that burns them for fuel. And we have scraps that, let's say, are much bigger than sawdust, but not wide enough to make flooring out of. We have 2 pretty substantial programs. We have a tabletop program that we sell to furniture brokers, and we also make cutting boards, like cutting boards that you cut meat or cheese on, even some that are distribution of that has on Amazon. So we have other businesses dedicated solely to the use of our scraps that come from the process of making hardwood floors. That's just a copy of our FSC certificate. It does expire in 2021, but I can assure you that we will re-up with the FSC. In addition to the FSC, we also didn't want to just take that as to be our only one. We work with all these other environmental agencies. So some of the most notable ones here in the US would be CARB2, and that goes into, that one's really for the VOCs as the glue in the engineered product. Floor score rated, Green Guard Gold, LACIAC compliant, which is just the lumber itself and where it's bought from manageable forests, and the LEED certified. Okay, so let's change gears a little bit into Janka hardness and some of the other durability factors of Brazilian hardwood. So I think just pretty much everyone in the industry knows a little bit about the Janka hardness scale. This may be able to teach some people some of the specifics about it and some of the technicalities of what the test is and what it does. So Gabriel Janka was an Austrian researcher, started this research in 1906. By 1927, it became more of like a standard industry test. So pretty much what it does is it takes a metal ball that's almost a ½ inch in diameter, and it measures the pounds, pretty much the pounds per square inch, to indent the ball halfway of its radius into the wood. All right, so pretty much all woods are tested for this, and we are proud to say at Indus Parquet our density of our woods across the board test higher, from measuring it from 3 known species here, probably red oak being the most of like the industry standard at 1,290 pounds per square inch, but you got maple and American cherry on there, and even our softest species of Longania hickory test higher. And then if you could see at the bottom, Brazilian walnut and Angico were sometimes more than 3 times the amount of weight and density. So, I've probably had, in my 5.5 years, I've probably had more conversations about Janka, and I want the audience to know that I understand all sides of the Janka. So I know that people would say, well, the finish can still be scratched, and that's true. I've heard people say, well, I'm a strong believer of the Janka and I like to promote it. I've heard customers say, I don't really believe too much in the Janka, but it's something that's a selling feature and something that should be told. I've heard people say, that it's something that they leave out. I can say this though, we've always put it on our marketing for the most part. The few times we didn't, I got a lot of pushback a few years ago for why we didn't. So these are factual information. We think it does have value. We do think it goes into the durability and the performance of the wood, but I don't want to be caught in a situation where I'm overselling it and making out the wood to be indestructible. That's not what we're saying, but we are saying that the hardness of our woods do have some real value in the performance of the wood. In addition to just the Janka hardness scale, these are some of the other tests that we regularly do to our products. So the abrasion test, which is for all intents and purposes measures the cycles or the revolutions of like a wood or like a sandpaper until it breaks the finish and gets into raw wood. So most kind of hardwood governing bodies will say at 600 cycles, it enters into where it would meet the industry standard for performance. I think it's noteworthy that Brazilian hardwoods all of our products test at least 2,200 cycles. Some test as many as 4,000 cycles before it breaks into the raw wood. The other 3 tests here, scratch resistant test, finish adherence, and impact resistance. These tests are more of just it's not necessarily where it could test good or medium or high. It's just either they pass it or they fail it. And in all cases, we don't sell a product at every production run. We test for all of this in the production run, and unless they pass, they don't go into a box and they don't get shipped out of the factory. All right, so in addition to the testing, like what this slide is supposed to is trying to communicate is how does that relate in real life situations? All right, so performance. Harder wood provides superior resistance to common wear and tear from high traffic levels and furniture, as well as from heavy displays and other business or institutional equipment or furnishings. So, in a real life example of that would be we have our hardwood in Ferrari dealerships where the cars, sit right on top of them and ride on. We are in we have certain specs in casinos where the money carts roll on top and you don't get indentation or anything like that. As far as refinishing, the harder the wood, the easier it is to refinish it multiple times. If damage occurs, a simple sanding and refinish restores the flooring to perfection. So we think, as if you guys are familiar with our products, our 3mm saw and face veneer, that's something where, it's debatable how many times that could be finished. We think that the harder Janka could maybe give you that upwards to where you can be safe to get 2 refinishes out of. As far as rot resistance, in some climates, wood products are exposed to consistent humidity and moisture. A superior hardwood provides superior resistance to wood rot in these environments. Insect infestation, superior wood density, and other inherent qualities make certain wood species more resistant to insect infestation. Brazilian hardwood products are some of the most resistant in the world. And then just the longevity. So not only should some of these woods that are in our lineup sell for a lifetime, but for generations. That's why we sell these products used in prestigious and treasured buildings like churches, museums, and educational institutions. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but this is just to communicate that we've taken all of the standardized building codes in the US and safety ratings, and we meet code on pretty much all the major ones. There's been yet to be one that I haven't been able to, show our tests for. So I'm going to move swiftly along through that. All right, so I mentioned before we have 12 different species of wood, or colors, I really should say, that we use. I'm just going to go through them all a little bit slowlier. So amendoum, Angico, Santos mahogany, and probably our highest volumed wood that we use, Brazilian cherry. Brazilian chestnut, Brazilian hickory, Brazilian oak, that's stained our South Beach color. That color is exclusive to only our 3/4 solid lineup. Brazilian pecan, tigerwood, Brazilian teak, Brazilian walnut, Lingania hickory is not also not natural. That is stained our Breza color. So those make up the all of the products in our running line. And most of what I showed you is natural. Some of these wood species are offered in a different gloss level. Some are offered in 1 or 2 stains, but still the vast majority of our lineup is, or the vast majority of our sales are just our natural species. All right, so some of the things that separate us from more of the commonly known domestic species like an oak or a maple or hickory. Traditional species of lumber used for flooring in North America feature grains created by mineral streaks, sapwood, and knots caused by broken branches over the years. Brazilian hardwood is entirely different. So most of the broken branches that happen that create the oak character, if you will, climate change, winters into summer, those things happen, and then you get the character that a lot of our domestic species see. In our woods, it's different. It doesn't, the character, not that there isn't any, but it's really the color variation, the combination of light and darks that are just natural. Bold contrast between light and dark tones. This is a dramatic variation, creates strong visual impressions. So you see the line there that says make an interior design statement. So I think, what I try to tell dealers to help maybe qualify a customer, a potential customer that could be right for an exotic floor, is to try to qualify the customer that wants something different. They want to make an interior design statement on their floor. It's not just, they don't want something that all their neighbors have or they've had their entire life. They're looking for a wow factor, if you will. So in addition to just the way our products naturally look in their natural state, even when you get to stains, and even when you get into darker stains, in general, Brazilian hardwood lumber features more vibrant tones in terms of deeper color. Compared to domestic species, domestically stains are applied to develop richer tones on finished products. However, the natural tones of the wood are often taken away, and a boring, consistent product is the final result. So if you could think of, dark stains on some of the domestic species, it's almost where it takes away all the character. There's not much variation from one board to the other. it's almost hard to tell if it's still real hardwood. So the picture that I tried to communicate the most message with is you take a color like Tigerwood Midnight. That's about as dark of a stain as you can possibly get. And even with that dark stain, you could still see the true beauty of hardwood. And every board is unique, and there's certainly no mistake that you're looking at a real hardwood floor and not, not a photograph, not a fake imitation. All right, specific to Indus Parquet, I want to go talk a little bit about some of the manufacturing processes that we do that we don't think most or any of our competitors are going through. Just a second before that, just want to remind people a little bit of the company story, just this one slide. You see in that picture, those are our owners. That's Kiko and Baggio, or just how we refer to them. Kiko Oleana, we call him Kiko, that's his first name, and Jose Antonio Baggio is on the right, and he's just referred to as Baggio. Their family, they share the same grandparents, migrated from Italy to Brazil in 1894. They started working in this business in 1963. By 1970, at the age of 19, that's when Indus Parquet was founded. Pretty much what they were doing there is they were getting their hands on wood scraps, handcrafting true parquet flooring, and installing it themselves. In 1978, that's when they really started to need manufacturing equipment, engineering, machinery. So they partnered up with one of the local universities in Sao Paulo to develop the best practices to manufacture exotic hardwoods. In 1996 is when the Indus Parquet products were in a large scale way brought to the US in a partnership with BR111. And I think a lot of you, especially ones who have been in the business for a little while, remember BR111 and really what they were, and it's actually more commonly a common business practice now, is they were just a private label brand. Okay, so they took Indus Parquet products, they branded it BR111. They took ownership of the marketing, the branding, and they had exclusive control in the US. So at the time, we were only making BR111 3/4 solid products. The engineered lineup consisted of mostly Triangulo with a little bit of a company called Master Pizzo. Master Pizzo made all their 5/16 products and some of their 1/2-inch products. In 2009, as Indus Parquet disengaged with BR111, almost simultaneously, they acquired that company I just mentioned, Master Pizzo, when they realized they really needed a full lineup of solid and engineered flooring that they make under their own roof and controlled. So with the combination of that, by 2010, we were the recognized leader in production of exotic hardwood floors. If you were to combine our acquired engineered business and what we had existing with our 3/4 solid. We do business currently in 40 countries in 5 continents. Baggio and Kiko are still very much involved in the business today. Some of you may know or have spoken to Flavia Baggio. That's his youngest daughter. They both have 3 daughters. The most involved on the Kiko side is his daughter, Marina, but she is in Brazil. But she's the most involved of the 3 of his daughters. All 6 of them, they both have 3 daughters, all 6 of them are still involved to some capacity. So it really is truly a family business even today. Something that we do that we're very proud of, that we think makes a huge advantage to the final product, is the way we dry our lumber, and it's called the breathe process. So what we do is we take our lumber and we let it sit in our yard for 6 months, all right? And we want it to get uncovered. We want it to get rained on. We want it to go through a season change. We want it to expand and contract. We want to get all that movement out of the lumber while it's in a raw lumber stage and not while it's in someone's floor. So those pallets that you see in the picture get constantly rotated, whereas the top one's getting the most rain and the most weather and the bottom one's getting the least. Those are constantly rotating. Then, just so you guys know, then it goes into a kiln. It doesn't go right from the yard into the finish line. It goes into a kiln, then it goes into the finish line for finished flooring. One advantage that we have is we make our own plywood, okay, and it's used from all South American hardwood. So where in other competition may buy woods like a Baltic birch or other pre-made plywood, and some of those woods may be great for some other domestic species, but we feel for the performance of our exotic woods grown also in South America, to achieve the most stable product, you need a core that's also grown in the same forest, in the same climate, to avoid any situation where the top veneer is fighting with the core. So we've tweaked this over the years, but it's been a while now that we think we found a very stable core for our engineered products. Under the same roof in the engineered mill, we can also have rotary peeled products, which is in our Longani hickory line, sliced face products, which sliced veneers, which is in our 5/16, and all of our 3/8, half-inch, and 5/8 products are used with sawn face veneers. Some of the other advantages that we have, we talk about lengths a lot. It's long lengths are something that we seem to be have a very good story with. It's very, very rare that someone would tell me that a competitive product average out longer than ours. Consistency. So we control all of our own manufacturing, solid and engineered. Nothing gets outsourced whatsoever. If you buy something Indus Parquet, it was made in our own roof, under our own roof. So there's never a situation where we have to worry about quality control in a third party manufacturing facility. Sustainability, we talked a lot about. We also have a cull-out process. Okay, so even though some of the natural beauty is a positive, we think it's a positive, there are some times where the color variation could get super extreme, and we will cull out a board that just simply doesn't fit with the color range of the product. So I use our Brazilian teak as an example. That's a 3/4 by 3-inch Brazilian teak sample that you see there. We do also, coming down the line, you'll see like a red board there, you'll see like a black board at the bottom from our competition. In our process, that would be culled out. Now we would use it for something else, but we would be used for like a seconds type of deal, a second grade product, not in the running line. And I just think this is a cool example, this slide of things that of an example that shows that we'll go the extra step to do anything to better our performance. So you'll see on the left side, those are stacks of Brazilian cherry, Jatoba, which is the actual species name. And Jatoba dries best out in the sun, with no shade, with no cover to block any of the wind and sun. Whereas Ipe, you'll see that on the right, you can see the tag close up. Ipe will get the color of the wood will get too gray if it's overly exposed to sun and to wind. So what we do is we take these large kind of outdoor forklifts and we literally drive it into the forest so it has a little bit of protection, still leaving it out there 6 months so it dries properly, but going the extra step to bring it into the forest. We really feel strongly that no one else is doing this to exotic woods. Some of the available constructions that we have on the 3/4 solid side, it's pretty simple. We make 3-inch products, 4-inch, and 5.5. Not every species is available in every width. And we have our classic lineup is smooth with a semi-gloss, and some of the species that we sell now are available in a textured wire brush. Engineered, we have several constructions available, everything from as thin as a 5/16 by 3 or by 6 1/4 inch wide. That's a smooth only program. We have a 3/8 by 3 1/4 smooth only program. 1/2 inch by 5, and that's a good mixture of smooth semi-gloss with low gloss wire brush products. Our 1/2 inch by 7 1/2 inch Lingani Hickory series is our only hand scraped product. That's a long length product, hand stained, hand scraped, and wire brushed. And our newest program is our wide plank program, 5/8 by 7 3/4, and that is wire brushed only. There is as of now, there is no smooth semi-gloss products in that construction. And to just kind of further what we feel are the new wave of exotics, wide plank is definitely something that is, everyone in the wood business would agree is something that's the most popular. So we thought we had to get with the times and make a wide plank product. So 5/8 by 7 3/4 is about as wide as as we feel comfortable going right now, especially with a 3 millimeter sawn face veneer. It's all low gloss products, as I mentioned, with a subtle wire brush. It's not a very aggressive look, and it achieves a very clean look. And what I mean by that is, although there may be some color variations, you get, especially in our Brazilian oak SKUs, you get what mimics to be a little bit of like a Select and Better look. Definitely on the character side, maybe not so much on the color variation side, but I have a couple of room scenes here that I wanted to bring to everyone's attention, because we don't want to be known as, a traditional shiny, smooth, red, exotic only company anymore. We really have evolved into a lot more than that. So that color you see there is our Monaco color. That is our South Beach color. That is our Dove Gray color, all the same product, just different stains. And lastly is not Brazilian oak, but Brazilian chestnut. But again, same concept, that we can create clean looks with not a lot of knots and mineral streaks within the wood. Some of our most proud jobs that we've ever accomplished, one certainly is the Vatican. So the Vatican Museum is with our Brazilian chestnut. We made a custom product for them that's herringboned, as you can see. And we do have a picture of the Pope with our owner of our company, Mr. Baggio, but they are very strict about how much we can use that photo in our marketing. And I mentioned before, Ferrari dealership. So if you've ever been in a showroom where the cars are right on the floor, to my knowledge, that we have the international spec, and that would have to be our floor that's on there. And that's all I have today. So if we want to turn this into a question and answer, I'd be happy to answer anyone's questions.
All right, thanks, Dan. I've got a number of questions that have come through as you've been presenting this today, and I'll just kind of start with the first one that came in, and we'll just go through some of these. As you're talking about some of the species, that one of the questions concerning whether or not these species darken over time, and do you have any that actually lighten up over time?
We don't have any that lighten. For the most part, they all get darker. Some get significantly darker. Some get very, not much darker at all, only a few shades. So like something like Brazilian cherry would the product is almost unrecognizable from the end result to when it first comes out of the box. It gets 3-4 shades darker, whereas Brazilian oak would maybe only get 1. But nothing gets lighter. It all gets darker and more deeper in color.
Okay. And specific to Indus Parquet, do you use the same finish on both your solid and engineered products? And a follow-up to that is the same finish used for low glosses as opposed to your semi-gloss product?
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same finish as far as like the urethane and the aluminum oxide. It's only the gloss that's changed. But yeah, and that's also the same for solid and engineered as well. It is all the same finish.
Excellent. The next question was regarding stability of the products. Are the species considered to be more stable than a domestic species?
I wouldn't. I don't necessarily know. It's more stable, less stable. But I mean, we're real confident in the stability of all of our products. On the 3/4 solid side, our products seem to be, perform very well. We think we have a great engineered core now, to where we don't really have a lot of claims as far as the products not performing. So I don't want to say they're more stable, but I also don't want to say they're less stable than some of the domestic species.
Hey,
Very
Craig,
well.
Craig, this is Joe Flaherty. I can kind of chime in on that, and I think Chris might be able to. As far as the NWFA is concerned, most exotic species, Brazilian species, and most of the African species, the denser woods, they do have less coefficient of change when they become wetter. So they grow less. So denser wood species like Brazilian cherry, Brazilian oak, all these things grow less than an oak would when moisture increases.
Well, that sort of would have applicability to us here in this humid climate. There was a kind of a secondary question that came in, it's mostly the same regard. It had to do with whether or not any of the species are considered to be more difficult for the manufacturer to work with, and are there any specific nuances in regards to insulation and those type of issues when working with an exotic species?
There are, there's some, I would say probably, Ipe and Kumru, walnut and teak, were especially on the engineered side, were a little bit difficult for us to get right. Not really necessarily in your market in Florida, really more of the drier markets. They were hard to, they were the most sensitive, I would say, to dry air, whether it be checking and trying to delaminate from the core. So we have kind of changed the species that we use for those products. As far as installation goes, I don't think any different rules apply. Now on the 3/4 solid side, if you want to nail, you have the different PSI gauges on the compressor that you would do for the nail gun. But besides that, pretty much all of the standard installation kind of guidelines that you would find for one of the popular domestic USA made products would apply for Brazilian made products as well.
You mentioned solids. As long as we're talking about that, specific to Indus Parquet, can you glue your solids down?
Okay, so as early as just very like a year or two ago, we would have strongly recommend not doing that. But now, like the technology, let's call it the technology of glue, improving so much. If the big glue manufacturers, Drytech and Mapei and Bostik and Sika, if they have their super duper all-in-one glues, and it covers sound and moisture and all the things, and it recommends it being like a glue down only installation, then we don't deter people from doing that. Now the glue manufacturer would take over the warranty of the install. Not to say that our wood wouldn't be warranted, but we don't discourage glue down installations like we did in the past anymore.
Hey guys, this is Chris McFarland with Custom Wholesale. I'll just say a little bit about that. Glues will hold down the wood, like Dan said, but keep in mind if the installers have anything to do with it, when you start to get the longer boards, especially on the solid, remember, if you got a board that has a little bit of turn in it. How are you going to get that board pulled tight? Even with straps, as you start to get a bigger floor, boards start to lift off, of the substrate, and then you could run into issues where you have hollow spots and stuff like that, and it becomes not a manufacturing problem. It becomes an installation issue. So keep in mind, you could run into some installation trouble when you start to glue down solids like that, or wider planks when doing these large boards, especially in solids. Engineered, not a problem. We do it all the time. But in the solid end of it, definitely more difficult, not just in this parquet, but solid in general, much more difficult to glue down. Just keep that in mind.
Thanks, Chris. Dan, you talked a little bit about this parquet's specific drying process. I think you call it breathe. Are there any issues that arise with a manufacturer when they use this process for each species?
When they use that process for each, what do you mean each species?
More along the lines that, the differences between the species, in the drying process. I mean, I would assume that some dry faster than others, some have more oil in them than others, but you follow the same procedure for each species, correct?
Yeah, so I mean, we for the most part we do follow different. We do follow the same process. So you'll notice in the one slide, we tweaked like the way we do Ipe versus Jatoba, Towery, which is the species that we use for Brazilian oak. That's one that we actually put underneath like not just a tree, but like covered underneath our like a roof, not on there's no walls into where the towery dries, but it doesn't get direct rain, only because it's a little bit more sensitive to getting like, a heavy duty rainfall on. So there are differences like that. We are kind of constantly testing the moistures of the woods as they're out in the yard. And then remember, they do go into a kiln. So even if some woods a little bit higher, some a little bit lower, depending on when they come out of the yard and when they go in the kiln, depending on the last rainfall or the time of year with the relative humidity in the air, like they do go through a 3-4 week kiln process before they make it to the finish line. So it's not, it's not like it needs to be so strictly monitored while it's in the yard. We just, the general concept of it is that it gets a lot of that movement that it wants to do, the expansion, the contraction, while it's in the yard and not, in a finished box.
So then with that in mind, I'm assuming then that the kiln process varies from species to species as well, based
Absolutely.
off of the
Yes.
moisture content that you're trying to dry it to. Is that correct?
100%. Different species are dried to different levels. I don't know all of them off the top of my head. I know there's different heat and just different ways that the machines have to run to dry them properly. And some get more moisture re-entered into the kiln, into the atmosphere. But once it goes in the kiln, absolutely, it's species specific to what we're drying it to.
And the last one I had here on the screen was that does hardness of a species have anything to do with the durability of the finish?
So that's an interesting question. The Tabor test that we do would suggest yes, meaning so we use the same finish for all of our different woods, but like a higher a denser, harder wood like a Brazilian walnut or an Angico test much significantly higher in the Tabor tests than some of our for us, our softer woods do. So I would say definitely yes to that question, that the Tabor even though it's really testing the finish. But the way we find it is it does take into consideration the hardness of the wood. So it almost tests the final product finish and density of wood combined when you get the final test results.
Would that have anything to do with the adherence of the finish to that particular product that tested out better?
It would suggest yes. I don't want to speak out of turn and say I know that for sure, but logic would tell me that the answer to that question is yes. But I can make a note and get back to anyone who is wondering about that.
Excellent. Well, I think that was the last of the questions that came in as we were going through the presentation today. On behalf of Custom Wholesale Floors and all of our attendees and partners attending today, we'd like to thank you, Dan, for today's presentation. And I'd like to remind everybody that we'll be posting this. If you happen to miss something or you saw something in Dan's presentation that you'd like to capture later on, we'll be making that available. Thank you, Dan.
I just want to say thank you for everyone's time and attention today. Hopefully we learned a little something.
Absolutely. Have a good day, everybody.